So today, basically, so this is just the office hours. Thank you very much, Kelly. So this is office hours for Localhost. Basically, um, so I had a conversation with Favor. I had a conversation with Dio, who was the anchor the last week, and basically, to my understanding, this is just an avenue for us to have discussions, conversations around everything that revolves around DevOps challenges that you have at work, um, new tools you're using, new ways you're doing things that already exist, new cool, a new shining way you are automating stuff. And it's an open floor, right? This is not a conference talk or a meetup talk. This is more like an open space where we should feel free to ask as many questions as possible and just interact and get to know each other. On the getting to know each other note, I will just try to introduce myself. My name is Idowu. I am currently a senior software engineer at Westwing, a company in Germany, and I am one of the co-organizers of Localhost. And yeah, since the beginning of Localhost, I've been a member of the community, trying to share as much knowledge as possible, trying to interact with people, trying to get to know as many people as possible, because the DevOps space is as wide as you can imagine, and there are different tools used by people in different companies. On that note, I think I've just maybe 6 minutes, 3 minutes. So I would just ask, does anyone have a topic for us to discuss today? Or to just start with, any challenges you're facing at work, anything you would like us to discuss? Okay, so I think I can actually start off about something I think is cool that I am currently doing at work. Okay, so for me personally, at work recently, so initially, most of our applications, we manage like around 50 applications. My team manage around 50 like applications. So initially, before now, all these applications have their own mChat to deploy to Kubernetes. And recently, what the new proposal I've been pushing is to have a generic mChat, in which we have only one singular mChat that those applications inherit from based on their specific configuration in values file. I inherit this mChat so that we can have a central place where we are managing a core M configuration. But this introduces a lot of complexities because most of these applications do a lot of things, do some very unique things. For instance, we have some applications that do pre and post DB migration as hooks for charts before they then deploy the application itself. We have some applications that have HTTP headers in their HTTP headers, that's basic auth in their liveliness and readiness probe. We have some applications that have init containers, some don't have. We have some applications that deploy that have several deployments within them in their mChat configuration. So this introduces some interesting complexities on what a generic mChat is supposed to be, right? So if I mention to someone else and that, oh, I'm working on a generic mChat, what comes to your head is just, oh, okay, when you have your deployment, your secrets, your ingress and things like that, and you're good to go. Everybody just, but because of the peculiarities of these applications, and of course, because you are a DevOps engineer, you need to slowly onboard people. You need to make people understand over and over again why you are doing what you're doing and how what you are doing affects them. Right. So so it's been I think we've been on it for like a couple of months now, because it's not straightforward, and you have to do a lot of administrative work to talk to people. People have to understand what you're doing, why you're making change to our code, where is our mChat going, how do we manage it as a team, like the software engineers now. So you need to do a lot of meetings with them, make them understand, slowly onboard them to, okay, why the overall advantage of doing something as cool as that. So now that I've opened the floor, does anybody who wants to talk now? Do we have anyone that uses Terraform at work in production? Yeah. Anyone? Okay. Right. Can, of course, without giving details, can you like give us like an overview of what your Terraform repository folder structure is like? Maybe we can learn something from there.
Yes. So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. No, your mic is.
How's it now?
Let me use my room.
First, I can
hear myself. Second,
second, the delay of starting.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
but
Yeah, I think.
But I can hear myself too. No, I don't think.
I don't think it's the network. Probably your mic.
Oh, interesting. Let me just.
All right. Any other person, pending the time EY joins back, just give us one or two things about your Terraform configuration. How you is there any automation? I would actually love to hear people talk about their automation experience or how they do automation with infrastructure with Terraform. I think there's a new phase. There's a new space that is currently being pushed now called continuous. I think it's continuous infrastructure or something. Yeah, or continuous configuration. I can't remember the exact term now. That involves automation with provision infrastructure. So, so anyone that is willing to give us mention a few things about how they use Terraform, what they use Terraform for, the folder structure, the configuration structure itself, not basically what you're deploying, but the structure. Do you use workspaces? How do you use workspaces? Do you use Terraform Cloud? Why do you use Terraform Cloud? And do you use remote backend? Why are you not using remote backend? You're using remote backend. Do you have automation in your Terraform? If you don't, why don't you have Terraform? Just let's have a discussion around Terraform. I think that's a very interesting one. So if the floor is open, so I see a couple of people here. I see Solomon, I see Karim, I see Olalikon, I see Charles, I see Calvin. So, and Kelvin himself that is eating. Yeah. So if you want to have a conversation, I think it's very interesting. And also, I think it's also a way for us to know the level of experience that we have on the call, so that we can know, so I can know how technical to go while having conversations around it, because that's the idea of this office hours. We want to make sure that even someone that is hearing about DevOps for the first time can join this office hours and then give us and then we can give the person an hint into what the career is like, and then probably someone might be interested in joining, picking it up as a career, as a long-term career. So yeah. So let me hear you guys out. Nobody uses Terraform at work? How are you guys deploying your infrastructure? Are you guys clicking on AWS console? I thought we were doing DevOps. I thought this was DevOps officers. I don't know, this is system administrative officers. What's going on? Nobody's using Terraform at work?
Yes, like in my team, they have DevOps engineers that are primarily concerned with that.
Okay.
Structures, and then you just basically focus on one part. So
okay, so what do you focus on?
The pipeline.
Oh, okay. Then let's hear about, if you focus on pipeline, it means you are doing some cool stuff in the pipeline. So let's hear let's hear what your pipeline looks like. What kind of a tool are you using? Yeah.
So basically, we're a consulting. So we have several customers, and so we use different tools depending on the client's budgets and type of projects they have, the type of software they work with, the customers, and so many things. So we use simple ones like Azure DevOps pipelines. We also use
Wow. Azure DevOps is the simple one.
it's quite simple. It's pretty straightforward.
Interesting. So if Azure DevOps is simple, what would you call GitLab CI?
GitLab
or GitHub Action? Yeah. or GitHub Action.
Yeah, they're related. We don't want to go near Jenkins, so
okay.
So usually most of the some of the pipelines were done with Jenkins, and so we migrated because of the complexity of Jenkins and having better options.
Okay.
Some pipelines we also use Ansible, which is some customers I'm very
okay.
Yeah, so it's fun, but just
nice.
You kind of concentrate on one part and kind of limits you in a way.
Okay, so if you use Azure DevOps, what do you deploy to? Since you said, so sorry, what company do you work for?
I work with a consulting company in London.
Oh, okay, awesome. So if when you mentioned you work for several clients, the first company that came to my mind was Demos. That was why I asked. So if you use Azure DevOps primarily, it means that most of your applications are deployed on AKS. Or do you deploy them outside Azure?
Yeah, sometimes some people don't. They just to build their own artifact and then they deploy it wherever they want to deploy it. But I think we have some of them use AKS as their clusters. We don't have any self-hosted cluster. So basically use AWS and Azure, and some projects are on GCP.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome. I actually think that makes a lot of sense. All right. Yeah, thank you very much, Kelvin. I think we were able to have an idea. Like you mentioned, you are more focused on the CI/CD part, and most of the work you do is actually on Azure DevOps. I think it makes sense. AY, are you back? You're on mute in case you're talking.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah,
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So what was the question? Something about Terraform.
Yeah, we're having a discussion around Terraform. I wanted to know how you use Terraform at work.
So we use it across clients. It's kind of different for different clients. We also try to push for like standards, making things the same for every client, because it's kind of difficult to onboard new engineers. You work with one client and you are familiar with the Terraform code, then you go to another client and it's something different. So that's it. I'm a junior. I'm still trying to learn about it, but that's how we use it currently.
All right. So I think Terraform is a very unique topic. I think it's a very unique topic because it's a very cool tool to use when you start working in the DevOps space. Apart from and for me, it's arguably one of the best tools when you want to manage infrastructure provisioning. Like you could use several other combination of tools, but I personally think Terraform is one of the coolest tools out there that you can use. So for me, so first, AY mentioned something around standardization, right? I'll mention a few things that we are doing. I don't like the fact that I'm the one doing most of the talking, but for today, let's have it that way. So I will mention some of the tools we are using in my company that makes or that tries to make our Terraform code as standard as possible, right? And that's why I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask if anyone has experience with these tools and stuff like that. So first, the first thing is the folder structure, right? The folder structure has to be visible from afar. Well, if you are managing, if you have a single Terraform repository for several teams, you should be able to separate several teams into maybe folders and then manage them that way. Also, environments can be managed using workspaces, right? In the past, I used to manage environment using folders, dev folder and production folder. But in recent times, you could actually create a Terraform workspace for staging and one for production, and then have a configuration file for staging. So when you want to do Terraform apply, you specify the TFVAS file for staging or production. That way, you are already making making your Terraform script dry such a way that you are not repeating yourself for production and staging, because what is changing is basically the values and then probably the name, right? Most configuration are still the same. Another thing is documentation, right? So there's this tool called Terraform Doc or Terraform Docs, that you can use to actually document configuration. And if you look at it, it actually makes life very easy, because you could actually plug your Terraform Docs implementation into your pre-commit hook, and then upon every commit, it runs the Terraform doc, and then your documentation is always up to date, the same way you're updating your Terraform configuration. Another thing we do is Terraform TF-lint, of course, to lint the code base, make sure every variable has a type, every variable has a description, every default value is correct as against the type of the Terraform variable. And of course, pipeline. We have an automated pipeline for our GitLab CI. We're using GitLab CI to automatically deploy, automatically run checks on our using Terraform, and manually deploy to staging environment, and also manually deploy to production environment when when I say deployment, I mean Terraform apply. So manually, the manual trigger for both staging and production, basically. So these are just some of the many hints that you can actually use to drive standardization for the Terraform code base. Another thing is using modules, basically, and taking it a step further, probably using external modules, such a way that your Terraform, the core Terraform configuration, and your modules that you are using is external. For instance, the way AY mentioned, where they have several clients. If you have external modules, say one module for provisioning EC2 instances that you have maybe you forked from the open source EC2 module, and then you did some unique configuration based on your company's specification. With that, you can have that module, and for every client that comes, they need an EC2 instance. You just reference that module in your Terraform configuration. That way, every Terraform code script you're writing for several clients looks similar, because they are dependent on the same set of modules, and these modules can be kept privately within the company. So the client don't have to worry, oh, why are you using an open source application, or an open source tool, or things like that. So I think those are the ways where you can actually revolving around Terraform, that you can actually strive for standardization, and then making things visible, that it also enables it also makes onboarding new engineers to the code base as simple as possible. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway.
Yeah, thanks. Is it Aidin? Your
Sorry?
name? Is it Aidin? Your name?
What can you see? Oh, okay, sorry. My name is Ido.
Okay.
That's just, yeah. My name is Ido.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Like we do most of that stuff. I think where we lack is in writing documentations. Because I remember when I was just on board there to start working on like real life projects. It was very bad, very confusing. There was no documentation. Then I think another thing is keeping up with like versions. Like if you have a very large can you hear me? Am I breaking off?
I can hear you, but you're breaking off.
Yeah, I think network is lagging. So if you have like a large Terraform code base and you're working for several clients, it's hard to keep up with maybe versioning. Like if you're using one version for one client and that has like changes and you are used to working on these clients and then you switch to another client and a whole version. So I think like that might be the challenge with setting standards. So it might be confusing. You might spend hours debugging only to realize that it's the version or something even smaller, like maybe you're using a wrong format that is now outdated with the version you're using and things like that.
Yeah. So for me, so that's where things like automation helps actually. When if you have some level of automation and some level of check, maybe shared link. So I'm dropping a link to the Terraform doc tool. It's an open source tool. Now the reason why this is actually like I mentioned, the reason why this is cool is because many DevOps engineers don't have the time to finish writing Terraform script and then write the documentation for that Terraform script, right? But with this tool, there's a level of documentation that comes out of the box that is, even with that alone, you are good to go because it highlights the output, the variables, the modules used, the version of the module. Yeah, I like a lot of things that just by looking at that documentation, you know where things are and you know what resource is used by what, right? So I think, and it's even cooler if you can use the pre-commit hook feature for this, such that upon every commit, a new the documentation is updated, and then you just push and make a PR basically. So yeah, I think that would help, and also you can check out TF Lint. So TF Lint also has a lot of rules you could configure, such that moving forward step by step, your Terraform code base becomes better and better upon every change. Yeah. So another person that uses Terraform at work, we might want to talk about maybe for folder structure. Oh, sorry, before we go to another person, AY, I don't know, is that with what I explained enough, or you have any other questions revolving around Terraform?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Another thing about Terraform. If there is nothing, we could go to another tool. How many people use it? How many people use mCharts at work? Nobody uses mChart. Nobody. Okay. How many people use Kubernetes at work? Let's start from there. Only Kelvin uses Kubernetes at work. Wow, I thought Kubernetes is the standard of deploy now. Okay, AY also uses Kubernetes at work.
Yeah, for yeah, we use Kubernetes.
Solomon, do you use Kubernetes at work? Chidi, do you use Kubernetes at work? Okay, so okay, Solomon doesn't use Kubernetes at work. That's interesting. So Solomon, if you can unmute your mic, how do you guys deploy, or where do you guys deploy to? Oh, okay. Interesting. So guys, as much as possible, for the people joining now, please, if you have any questions, anything you would like us to discuss about, that's why it's an office hours, anything at all, you're struggling with a kind of setup or configuration at work, you want to discuss about a new technology, there's something you are trying out in your spare time, just unmute your mic and then let us know about it. That's for the new people that are joining. It's an open floor. It's for people of diverse experience. If today is your first time hearing about DevOps, you are welcome. Ask as many questions as you would like about the career, about the tools being used, about the chain of tools being used, about the concept, about the culture, about how it is done, right? And we can have a conversation around it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have
Okay.
a question.
Go on.
Yeah, so I'm trying to configure a local Docker registry on Kubernetes. Can I do that on my cloud managed Kubernetes cluster? Do you have an idea how to go around this?
Okay. It's an open question. Does anyone want to open it up for discussion? I don't want it to build a one-on-one conversation. So anyone at all? All right. I don't have the conversation. So you want to configure your Docker registry, basically username and password, so that Kubernetes can come.
I want to use a local Docker registry. So I want to create I want to create the Docker registry in my cluster. So I don't want to push to any remote registry. I want it hosted on my Kubernetes cluster. I want to host it on my node.
You want to host it on the Kubernetes cluster is local, is on your machine.
Yeah.
Are you using Docker Desktop?
No. Just I'm using
Minikube.
No. I'm wondering whether if I use the AWS hosted cluster, or I use VMs to configure a cluster. I don't know which one will be perfect for that scenario.
Okay, so personally for me, I would advise that you go with EKS, Kubernetes Managed Cluster, right? It saves you a lot of administrative overhead, and also if you are using EKS, there is actually a straightforward. If you are already on the AWS ecosystem, you could actually use ECR to manage your Docker image so that you don't have to use Docker Hub. You can use ECR, push your images there. It is private to just you and the people that have access to the account. And then your Kubernetes already have access to that, and you don't need to set up like internal registry. Does that make sense?
Just the issue was the specification. Client wants a local Docker registry.
Okay. The client wants a local Docker registry, but where would the application be deployed?
On the Kubernetes cluster. So
which will be on AWS.
Yes. So I want to. Okay, I think that makes sense. I can say, hey, I can use the Kubernetes AWS registry, which is secured. That makes so much sense. You can access that from the machine and from the cluster.
Exactly, and what you can do, and you can take it a step further in terms of security, and make sure that your Kubernetes cluster is only accessed privately. And so two things when it comes to security for Kubernetes. First, you have to do the network security, and you have to do the access security, right? So for network, your Kubernetes cluster is only accessed privately. Maybe you can configure a VPN in front and all that. Then after you have access to the Kubernetes cluster, to actually have access to actually do anything with the Kubernetes cluster, you have to talk about RBAC, role-based access control. For me, I use AWS username. That's what you can configure IAM, the AWS username. So please, please, for people that are new to DevOps on the call, if there's any term I mention, if there's anything I say that you don't understand, please just mention. Like I'm willing to go back as much as possible to try to explain. And at the same time, I want to make sure I'm not mansplaining, so I want to find a balance. So please, if there's anything I mention that you don't understand, please just maybe write in the chat if you don't want to interrupt, or just unmute your mic and then just let me know, and I will be willing to explain as much as I can. So Kelvin, as I was saying, so two things: network and then RBAC. So personally for me, I use IM, the username. So say I'm working for a company called example.com, and I configure a user called idowu@example.com. That username, I will use it to configure access on the Kubernetes cluster. So so you have to have 2 levels of access before you can use the Kubernetes cluster. So that's a lot of security. Now, but what you just mentioned introduces a new aspect of DevOps that I would also like to talk about, maybe not at length on this call, maybe in future office hours, is communication with people, right? In most cases, I think you are even in a good place where your client is probably not so technical, and your client is saying, I want to local this, I want it local because I don't want to access because I'm concerned with security. In most cases, your users as DevOps engineers or SRE are software engineers. And I've been met some software engineers that are probably staff engineers or principal engineers, and they probably tell you they know your job better than you, because they probably took a Kubernetes certification or an AWS certification. So most often than not, DevOps engineers are in a position where you have to balance exactly what you're communicating and make sure that you are communicating what you need to communicate, and then making them know that these are the things that are feasible because of this, because of XYZ, and we don't want to do this because of ABC. Do you understand? So you just have to, sometimes you have to be diplomatic, right? And sometimes you just have to let them know that this is not possible. This is what we need to do, and things like that. So yeah. But I think this solves the problem.
But what I was considering it was the fact that they wanted to be able to use Ansible to automate the deployment to the cluster. So really not being able to figure out how to do that using a cloud-hosted cluster.
Is also straightforward. First, if they're on the cloud, that is awesome. The next thing you have to figure out is, how do I connect Ansible, which is on a repository? Of course, I'm expecting Ansible to be in a repository, say GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, anyone.
Okay.
How do I connect that to have access to my Kubernetes cluster?
Okay.
It's your CI/CD pipeline. It means that your CI/CD pipeline has to have private connection with your Kubernetes cluster, and then you are running Ansible commands within the CI/CD pipeline that is already connected to Kubernetes, and then you can deploy. Just the way, I think it's similar to the way you would deploy an application to Kubernetes. It's also similar to it, just that now you are running the Ansible commands against the Kubernetes cluster or against so it means that if your CI/CD is managed on a VM, it means that you can use role-based access using IAM roles to have access to the cluster. So there are a ton of ways you could actually go around it.
Oh, that's brilliant. I just wanted to understand. Yeah, that's a good perspective. Yeah, thanks a lot for that.
Yeah. So any other thing anyone wants to talk about, or anybody that doesn't understand what we have been discussing since?
So please, how about the situation whereby you're doing it on-prem and not on cloud?
Sorry, Precious, your voice is a little bit low. Can you increase your voice?
How about a situation whereby you're doing it on-prem and not on cloud? How do you go about it?
On-prem. So if you're doing it on-prem and everything is, if everything is on-prem, it means that you actually don't have a lot of things to worry about. Now, for on-prem infrastructures, it means that you actually have to manage a lot of things yourself, because the cloud will not provide you that. Now, Kubernetes clusters on-prem, you could use, there are a lot of tools you could use Kop, you could use Kube ADM, to actually provision Kubernetes on-prem. So you have several, so you can actually manually configure your Kubernetes. But of course, if you are doing on-prem, it means that you have to be ready to do a lot of administrative Kubernetes work, right? You need to configure the nodes yourself, as compared to the cloud, of course. You need to configure the nodes yourself. And for me personally, I would advise that if you are doing a lot of things on-prem, I would also advise that as much as possible, your version control should also be on-prem, all right? So that you have this, so that your CI/CD would not have latency, and you have to go through the internet to connect to your. So if you have, for instance, you can deploy GitLab on-prem. I'm not sure if you can do Bitbucket, but I know GitHub too also does this enterprise version and things like that. So that way also is similar to the same thing. It's just that now you yourself have to be responsible for the management of these things instead of the one that AWS abstracts from you. Basically, it's very similar. On-prem and the cloud is very similar. It's just that there are a lot of self-management or system admin work that goes into on-prem management. For instance, you cannot do things like auto-scaling and things like that you do on the cloud because it's on-prem. So that's just basically the difference. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, spot on.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So any other thing anyone wants us to discuss? We'll be here for about 43 minutes. So anything, any tool? Yeah, go on.
So I came across an interesting thread on Reddit on Kubernetes. So there were a lot of people saying it's just hype and it's very complex. So I've not really done anything serious with Kubernetes. I've just like fixed pods or troubleshoot stuff in it. So I've not really done like big stuff with Kubernetes. So what really caught my eye was when someone said he carried out an interview and then he asked the person like what's hands-on the person had with Kubernetes, and people always don't have like serious hands-on on Kubernetes. So I was trying to understand like what exactly would be the definition of like serious work with Kubernetes? Like what would be something very deep that you can do with Kubernetes, or that Kubernetes can, change for a person's business or infrastructure?
Okay. So for me personally, I'll be talking from my own experience, right? Kubernetes is hands-on with Kubernetes can be in three phases. So first, we have administration, Kubernetes administration, which involves security. Of course, everything DevOps involves security, so I will just leave that out. Kubernetes administration, Kubernetes application developer, and then core contribution to Kubernetes, right? More, you can look at the last one as more of a site reliability for Kubernetes. So I'll explain them. So first, Kubernetes administration is more of managing the Kubernetes cluster itself. So you want to deploy things like Calico to manage the networking within your Kubernetes cluster. You have a single Kubernetes cluster that is used by several clients. You want to deploy things like network policies to make sure client A cannot resources for client A cannot communicate with resources for client B, right? You want to deploy things like resource quota to make sure that if several clients are sharing one cluster, you want to make sure that this client does not use above a specific resource. All the applications, all the pods in this namespace, they don't use above this specific resource. So that is more of like a Kubernetes administrator kind of focus. So you want to make sure that you have more interaction with Kubernetes control plane. If you are doing on-prem, like Precious was mentioning, you will be doing a lot of work with managing Kubernetes Kube API, the schedulers, a lot of things that are core to Kubernetes itself. Now, if you are doing hands-on, if your hands-on experience is based on Kubernetes application developer, what your concern basically is, the applications on Kubernetes, are they probably, do they have the proper labels? Do they have the proper selectors? Does the name of the resources make sense? If you're using Helm charts, the name of the Helm releases doesn't make sense. How do you manage Helm rollbacks? How do you make sure that the ingress is configured correctly? So there's a new phase of ingress. Instead of using the annotation of kubernetes.io/ingress.class equals nginx, now you have to have a configuration under the spec, which is ingress class name. These things are the business of a Kubernetes application developer, right? When you are concerned about, okay, if the Kubernetes cluster is a specific version, the version you are using for your API version for your resources, your deployment, your ingress, are they correct? Do they correspond to that Kubernetes version, or they will be deprecated at a later version? So those are your concerns. Then the last one I mentioned was people contributing to Kubernetes. We have people writing heavy Golang code that are doing open source contribution to Kubernetes itself, right? Or building operators, writing Golang code to build custom resource definitions that can be used to extend the functionality of Kubernetes. So hands-on could be in different phases. Now, how does all this tie together to actually help your business? For me personally, based on the cost of management of Kubernetes, I would say that you actually have to reach a level of complexity in the applications you are deploying, or a certain number of applications. I don't want to give a specific number, but your application has to be a certain number before you can consider Kubernetes. If not, the revenue you'll be getting from managing the Kubernetes cluster and then the application you're running on them might not. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have just one website and then you're running Kubernetes cluster, right? So for me, I just feel is the revenue. If you weigh the revenue you're getting from the application you're running on Kubernetes cluster, or that you intend to run, and the cost of running the Kubernetes cluster, if you weigh both, and then you can then decide if Kubernetes is for you. What are the advantages of using Kubernetes? Kubernetes helps with a lot of things, right? Something as simple as restarting your application when there's a downtime, when the readiness probe, the liveliness probe, probes your application after a certain number of time and it's not responsive and it restarts your application. That alone, if you want to achieve that in a traditional setting, there's a lot of administrative work that goes into that, right? Things like horizontal pod auto-scaling, where the number of pod automatically scales based on the traffic coming into your application, which in turn scales the node that are running on your cluster. That's also a very key advantage of using Kubernetes, because if you're going to do that in a traditional way, you will be spending more, and also you would need, in most cases, you need human intervention to achieve what Kubernetes will have achieved with just simple configurations in place. So it depends. So for me, I don't know when someone says Kubernetes is hype. I've been working with Kubernetes for several years, and there's always a reason for me to use Kubernetes. There's always a reason for the company I'm working for to use Kubernetes. There's always a reason for the client I'm working for to use Kubernetes. And the beautiful thing is the cost of running Kubernetes clusters on the cloud, especially AWS, is reducing day by day, right? To run Kubernetes on GCP, to run the cluster itself on GCP is free. It's just the number of nodes that you pay for. On Kubernetes, I think last year or so, they slashed the price of running the cluster itself by 50%. So I'm guessing in the next couple of years, to run the Kubernetes cluster itself will be free. You'll just be paying for the VMs that you're using as nodes attached to Kubernetes cluster. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, so the Kubernetes space is actually wide. One could focus on just contributing to open source, like contributing to the core Kubernetes application, or writing Kubernetes operators or controllers to extend the core functionality of Kubernetes. Your company could have some really unique needs that the cron job resource does not meet, and you want to extend it to do something more. It's open source, and it's open source for a reason. You can just make it pure. Any other thing for consideration, or is there something I mentioned that you want me to explain further, or anything like that? Any questions? I would really love more people to unmute their mic so this conversation can be more engaging, or drop it if you don't want to unmute your mic.
Kubernetes, I think your workload will determine whether you should use it or not. And as the software architecture is becoming more microservices and becoming more complex, I attended this Google Next event. They were looking at having multiple cloud providing integrated into each other, that you can pretty jump off from GCP to AWS to Azure. I mean, computing is becoming crazy and technology is at a mad rate. So, I mean, we are having quantum computing just at our forefront. So things are pretty at a crazy rate. So applications are becoming more advanced. And so maybe in Nigeria, maybe because of the technology kind of how the level it is, but with time, you can't do without clusters. You can't. So with time, it will just go down, and then as far as it's basically costing, when it becomes very affordable, people will naturally and as many applications become more heavy, and people will just transition there naturally. So I think there's a steady increase in the adoption, and so as an engineer having that skills, it's a hot cake, So it's something that you naturally gravitate towards as the demand comes to, but it's something you become very comfortable with, because it makes your work really easy and pretty easy to do too. So it's a time thing, I think so.
I think you are very spot on, Kelvin. Thank you very much. So we have 6 minutes left. So so it's 1 hour. So you have 6 minutes left. Does anyone have any other thing to talk about? And of course, it could also be how boring the conversation has been since morning. So just anything that you want to talk about, you can drop a message in the chat, or you could also unmute your mic and then let's hear your voice. All right. So if no one has anything to say, I will just mention. So I'll just reiterate a few things about Localhost for the next 5 minutes, and then we can round up the call. So Localhost, like most of us on the call know, is a community of SREs, DevOps, system admins, anybody that works with infrastructure. And the beautiful thing about infrastructure is infrastructure cuts across every industry. We have DevOps engineers in the blockchain industry, we have DevOps engineers in the ML industry, we have DevOps engineers in the software engineering industry, so a lot. Localhost, the goal for Localhost is to make sure we have a central place where people can come around, feel welcomed, have conversations like this, learn a thing or two, and just get to know people, network, and then who knows what this relationship or space can provide in the future. on the 29th of October, there's a conference that will be happening in Lagos, which is called Shifting Left. Basically, it's the plan for that conference is to further drive home the point of why we need DevOps, what are the advancement of DevOps, how people can join DevOps, how people can take advantage of the opportunities that are available in the space, and then learn, grow, and learn from people, and then grow as much as possible. Every year we have a program called DevOps Accelerate, where we bring in new people new to the field, have conversations with them, walk them through the core concepts of DevOps for a few months, and then find a way to release them into the world for them to start digging into the riches that DevOps actually provides. We have a Telegram group where it's open for all to ask questions, DevOps related questions, and you would certainly have someone reply to you. It doesn't have to be any of the core organizers, but you'll definitely have somebody reach out to you, and then basically try to help solve a problem you're having, or try to learn from you also. Yeah, that basically covers everything. The goal is for us to make sure there's a space for DevOps engineers, because I've been in situations where I have an issue, a DevOps related issue, and I couldn't find answers on Google. I couldn't find answers on Stack Overflow. I couldn't find answers anywhere. So it's communities like this that actually help, and having conversations with people actually help you answer some questions that you might not necessarily be able to answer if you are doing things on your own. Yeah, that basically covers everything. And this Localhost is also extending to other countries. For people in Germany, probably sometime next year, we'll be having Localhost for people in Germany, and people in UK will be having Localhost for them, and people in Canada will be having Localhost for them. So the idea is to make sure that people have local meetups to actually hang out and have this kind of conversations revolving around DevOps SRE. Yep. I think we have basically on time, and I think we can call it a day. If you start for the Precious, go on.
Okay, please. I have a little two questions, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a deployment that I'm trying to make on Spinnaker.
Sorry?
Just this deployment I'm trying to make on Spinnaker.
Okay.
Then, whenever the deployment tries to get to UAT, you just fail with exceeded the progress deadline. So I've tried to make some research on Google, but I'm not really getting what I want. So I don't really know if you can just help me out.
Okay, so you have if I get it right, you have a deployment on where?
Spinnaker.
Can you type that in the chat?
Okay. Okay, the deployment is on Spinnaker. I do my deployment on Spinnaker. So whenever I get to UAT deploy, you fail with exceeded the progress deadline. So I don't really know where
exceeded progress deadline.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't really know where this is coming from. I've tried to make some research on Google, but I'm not really getting what I want.
Okay. So what exactly does the UAT entail?
Okay, the UAT.
Like when the UAT are running, that's causing.
Like I'm just trying to make some amendment. When I check the pod, everything is fine. The pod is running on Kubernetes. But when it gets to UAT deploy on Spinnaker, it's always exceeding progress deadline. So I don't really know where.
Do we have any logs in the pods? When you describe the pod, do we have anything? Do you have any logs?
Yes, there's log. It's running fine. It's running fine.
So, how is Spinnaker deployed? Are you running it on the VM, or is just you are just using the CLI?
Okay, it's not on VM.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Is it deployed on the Kubernetes cluster?
Yes, it depends on Kubernetes cluster.
Okay. So, okay, to make it even a little bit easier, if you are comfortable sharing your screen so that you can walk us through, if you're comfortable sharing your screen, you can walk us through what the problem is, and then we can see how we can help. Is that something you can do?
No, not really.
Oh, okay, that's understandable actually. So, but now the problem is it introduces a level of complexity because we don't have the full picture of what the problem might be. Now, however, if there's something like the error you mentioned, you said exceeded timeout or something. So for me, I will be deadline. So for me, I'll be looking. My focus for resolving this will be checking things related to network. To make sure that the CI/CD pipeline that you're using to Amazon, you're using CI/CD pipeline has access to the cluster, like network access. You also check the while you are deploying, while you are getting to that UAT stage, you can also check the logs to make sure that you are not missing any details. Another thing you can do is to describe the deployment or the pod to make sure that you are getting all the details that you're supposed to get. I would advise while you are deploying, you stream the logs, that's Kubernetes logs -f, then the pod. So you stream so that you can see as the logs are coming in. Also, like someone like Adidamola suggested, the question is asking is, can your Spinnaker core cluster reach your UAT cluster? So basically, you have to check the networking to make sure that access is available. Because for anything revolving around timeout, deadline, it's always revolving around networking or some specific configuration specific to those tools. So I'm not sure I can help further because I really don't have a lot of context on what you're running, and I totally understand that you cannot share a screen, but yeah, maybe there are other information you could share that could help maybe with the debugging. Yeah, but if you want to also Google search, you could also Google search things around networking, around connection timeout and things like that. Yeah. So any other thing?
Okay. Also, like when you are having readiness and liveliness proof, like what are the things that we look at?
When you have what?
Liveliness and readiness proof. When they fail, what are the things to look out for?
When they are failing?
Yes, like what are the things to look out for?
Okay, if your readiness probe is failing, it means that your application is not running, right? You need to make sure that, so there are a lot of configurations when you're setting your readiness probe. You need to make sure you're using the right endpoint, and you're using the right port. You need to also make sure that if your application has some set of delay, you need to make sure that delay is there. You need to configure that delay so that the readiness probe does not kick in until your application is actually ready. So if your readiness probe is failing, it means that your application is not running and there's no way for it to run. But you in some cases, if you remove the readiness probe, it runs. So you need to understand what is making it fail. If it is failing, you need to check if it is failing because you are using the wrong port, maybe you're using the wrong path. Some people, the readiness probe part is just /, some people is /out. So you need to make sure that you are using the right path. There's a delay, you need to make sure that the delay is also configured on the like in the part of the configuration for the readiness probe, and also for liveliness probe. You need to confirm if you are using the HTTP GET configuration. You need to confirm that you're using the correct path, you're using the correct port. Yeah, if there is a set of delay, if your application takes a reasonable long time to respond, you also need to configure that. So those are the things you can actually check. And also sometimes the logs of the, I think Kubernetes log is application logs are actually very powerful. And that thing, describing the pod and checking the logs, between describing the pod and checking the logs, you most times you'll be able to find what might be the problem that's making your probe fail. Makes sense, Precious?
Thank you. Thank you. That makes sense.
All right. So if there are no other questions, this is where we'll end the office hours for today. I would really love for everyone to come back next week to have more interesting conversations around the tools used at work, challenges faced at work. Just a sit down to have interesting conversations, actually. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening. Bye.